Is the Magma Cannon any good in patch 6.1.2? Fair warning, since this is almost a pure artillery piece, the footage here shows when that works well, and when it works poorly late in a fight. You'll also see the damage numbers it puts up pretty effortlessly. It's a good and reliable unit for roasting infantry, and not one thing has diminished its usefulness since launch. Let's show how a cannon can win a heated argument. Recruit for 1050 gold and 262 upkeep. This single entity war machine is 5010 health on Ultra. Armor is 70, fire resistance 15, leadership 55, so it will attempt to run once smacked around. Speed is 20, but charge speed is 30, as in it's not a can't run unit. Melee attack begins at 20, attack interval 4, splash target size very large, which dilutes damage even against chariots. Max target splashed 4 maximum. Melee defense comes at 10, with weapon strength 170, split between base 140 and armor piercing 30. Charge bonus is 5 and mass is 2500. This is to explain that despite being a Chaos Dwarfs self-propelled artillery firing freaking lava, it has no chance in melee. Abandon all hope, ye who enter close combat. On a more positive and fiery note, ammunition is 25 to start, range is 380 initially, missile strength 500 officially, and each shot is both flaming attack and inflicts the burnt morale penalty, -8 for 10 seconds, but that's on top of all the other penalty stuff from being hit with artillery to begin with. Each direct impact is base 140 and AP 260, which isn't even that bad, except that it's one cannon, one shot. Detonation radius is 7 meters, and within that, base 70 and AP 30 damage. And then there's the Magma patch, which creates lingering damage to unfortunates entering the area even after the shot, so if you shot in front instead of behind, or a unit in back of the target is approaching over it, there will be more damage. That's how the numbers get so high. Just keep in mind, it's a relatively flat arc, relatively. Reload time is 10 seconds, which is really good for artillery, but yeah, it's just one cannon. Total accuracy of 40 and calibration distance of 275, modify a calibration area of 15, so there's drift, but it gets even tighter with veterancy. And there is a penetration cap of very small, which usually would be associated with no targets hit beyond the first, but it seems the number is 2 in the stats. Goblins qualify as small, so this may or may not actually do anything in-game in practice. I don't know. It's a siege attacker, has the contempt mechanic since Chaos Dwarfs crew it, is hell forged, so can be Demonsmith healed, and interestingly, because I did not enable this during the demo combats, it has Hellbound, so in campaign that's perfect vigor, magical attack, and 20% physical resistance until below 25% health. This will keep its firing rate up, and demons better not feel secure. I'm not sure I knew that was a thing since early post-launch tinkering. In the Redline skills, Hellforged Ordnance naturally applies, so that's plus 20% ammunition and plus 10% range, and that range boost is extremely welcome. At rank 7, which they'll reach nicely if they're not caught in melee, Bloodied Bombardment adds plus 12% missile strength, plus 12% to the explosion damage components specifically. Reload time reduction 10% and 50% missile resistance, the last one good for not being chewed up by ordinary archers that slip into range. In the tech tree, Continuous Bombardment helps us once again with plus 10% direct missile strength, plus 10% explosion damage, and plus 10% ammunition. Weapons of War adds 5% range, along with a unit cap enlargement discount. And it bears mentioning for later, this one uses up one unit cap slot only. The Hellforge upgrades are the same ones from the Iron Demon could get, but they land differently due to the complete lack of viability in melee combat. Ammunition plus 15% is just plain nice, although, are you going to fire all that in a single battle? Maybe, maybe not. Barrier hit points are like 20% of this unit's entire value at 1000 points, so don't call it wasted. Now, extra powder for plus 30% damage period until under 80% ammunition is broken powerful for most any artillery. Forged Fire and Blazing Body aren't really meant for it, but sometimes it'll help a tiny bit. You already have Hellbound. Extra reload helps maximize extra powder, and immunity to contact effects is a luxury, that's why it's last. So how do we use the Magma Cannon? Really, it's not hard to use at its most basic level, you just have to create line of sight and have at it, though trying to target a patch of ground can still get wonky all this time later. Also, well, the blunt fact is that if the enemy YOLOs your lines, you have a harder time using it. It is great for provoking such a charge, but then you have to deal with it. It is great for doing severe damage to infantry up to middling armor, but moderate damage to super elite infantry is just fine too. It's not like you're doing zero damage to regular cavalry either. So what's the catch, besides melee being death? Well, there are two things. First, you really love to have targets you can still shoot at when the line's engaged, like Jade Warrior crossbowmen, preferably at a safe distance. Second, keeping the enemy from crowding you is the sort of thing you want a couple of great Tauruses for, and tricks like that. Maybe Hobgoblin and Wolf Raiders with bows to classically stretch the battlefield. It's not that these things don't work or anything. It's that it takes work to do, and you're not going to stop the entire force like that. Unless perhaps if you're using your Lord as bait, and that creates its own problems. So this is always a do what you can unit, ideally generating blobs around something nice without your own infantry being overwhelmed, so in a real fight, use something that's not goblin laborers. I felt it was worth showing because the upside and downside are so starkly separated, but at any rate, this is the epitome of the fighting game concept of poke damage. You are provoking the enemy into doing things it would prefer not to. Provoking the enemy into staying at a far enough range your cannons can do a ton of damage is not always going to be easy, but it's worth trying. A stopped unit is easy prey for the cannon, otherwise the cannon may be accurately hitting where the enemy was 5 seconds ago. Take care, and have fun melting your enemy's heart and torso, limbs, armor, swords, and so on and so forth.